Good morning. Okay, so what we came out with yesterday is basically in Israel they have these auctions to sell confiscated property from the government. Rav Shraga in the final analysis basically says you're better off not participating in any of these auctions because sometimes the government confiscates more than what they should, and they place tariffs and fees and penalties well beyond what halacha would normally allow them to do, and therefore he says it would be better if you don't participate in these auctions. Now, it is important to know that how would we translate this into a chutz la'aretz phenomenon? So the answer is that this only seems to be a problem if you're dealing with, an auction where you know that the vast majority of the property that's being confiscated is from Jews. But if it's being confiscated from non-Jews, then I don't think any of Rav Shuraga's objections would really apply. Okay. All right. Let's look at the next tshuva. Achal ma'at pitzuchim begezel harbe shanim v'cha'et chazar b'tshuva. A person ate a number of snacks through theft for a number of years, and now he's a bal tshuva and he wants to know how to do tshuva. So he's been noshing on stolen goods for a long time, and he feels bad. Okay, so this is the shaila. Ani ba'al teshuva uviyoti chiloni. I'm a ba'al teshuva. When I was not religious, hayiti nichnas lechanut shel pitzuchim v'to'em ma'at afilu shelo hayiti rotze liknot. And when I would go to the store that sells pitzuchim, which is, like the nuts and the raisins and the
bulk food stores.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of them in Israel, that's, yeah. What's the literal translation of pitzuchim? It's, botnim is peanuts. So pitzuchim is just really the regular, like the snacks, like the nuts, the figs, the dates, the crunchy stuff. The bamba they don't sell out in the open. You got to buy that.
Those candy coated peanut things.
Yeah, the ones that the wheat coated nuts, and all that stuff, like at the shuk. So when I used to go just walk into the store, and I would say Itzik, manishma, and then I'd grab a handful of those, whatever it was, a bunch of peanuts. Afilu shelo hayiti rotze liknot, even though I had no intention of buying anything. Uvechol pa'am lo haya bamesh lakachti shava pruta. Each time, it wasn't really worth very much, not even worth a pruta. Avol b'meshach zman rav zeh hitzaref l'sikum michbad. But over the course of years, you can imagine each time I walk by, I grab a few peanuts, and over a year or 2 years or 10 years, it's a lot of peanuts.
When we say this is what happened at the times of Noah?
Yes, there's a medrash that says that, and that's that people would get away with theft by, It's funny because he calls it cracks. Pitzuchim are cracks, but that's not what it means. It means snacks. Let's just see. How do you say pistachios? No, it's is fistokim. Okay, yeah. Okay. האם אני חייב להשיב לבעל החנות מה שאכלתי, או דכיוון שבכל פעם אכלתי פחות משווה פרוט אני פטור? So the shaila is, do I have to make a cheshbon and pay back the owner of the store what I assess that I probably ate over the course of these last several years? Or is the argument that since I ate less than a shava pruta each time, I didn't really technically commit an act of actionable theft? and therefore I don't have to pay him. So, and he
He's
doesn't.
doing well as a vulture.
Yeah, he's doing. Yeah, I mean, it's actually quite conscientious of him. So it's really interesting. We could imagine, I don't know, what kind of comparable situation.
You get grapes.
Yeah, a guy eats grapes from the grocery section because he's hungry.
Olives, really, so to grab some of the pickled olives, they used to have the cart there.
I mean, there's no sign at Sobeys that says you're welcome to taste the grapes, but there are. You ever see the old ladies who do it? I don't know why. Yeah. Okay.
That's going back.
All right. Kasav Moran b'Shulchan Aruch Kol Hagoyzel es Chavera Afilu Shava Pruta Kilu Notel Nafsho. The Shulchan Aruch says as follows: anyone who steals from his friend, even if it's just a pruta, it's as if you're taking his life. It's almost like a form of murder. Shenemar v'kava et kovaehem nafesh, that those who steal really invade their very soul. The Kosav Od Shama Shulchan Aruch Asur Ligzol Ola Ashok Afilu Kolshu. The Shulchan Aruch also writes that you're not allowed to steal even the smallest amount. Umashma midvarev she'asur lignov afilu pachas mishava pruta. The implication being is that you're not even allowed to steal less than a shava pruta. Now, a shava pruta is actionable. I can take you to court. The court can order you to pay me back. But if you steal less than a shava pruta, it's not actionable. But it's still usur. Ubir hasmasham sheha isur ligzol pachos mishava pruta hu mishum bechatzi shir asur mehatorah. Kamosha Asr Chatzi Shir B'Yisurim. The Sma explains that the reason why you can't steal less than a pruta's worth of goods is for the same reason that, let's say, when something is Asr, like Chazer, even though the Torah says you're only going to get Malkus if you eat Chazer, if you eat a Kazayas, you're still not, there's a principle of Chatzi Shiur, that even eating less than what the Torah prohibits is still prohibited. Right? It's just not actionable. Okay. So the same thing is true when you steal less than a pruta. It's not actionable, but it's still usur. Amnam yesha pirshu she'isr geneva b'pachos mishav pruta lo usr midin chatzi shir eladuhu isr gezela mamish. Other commentaries disagree, and they say that it's not because of chatzi shir, but it's actually subsumed under the actual prohibition of stealing. Because we never find the rabbis assigning a parameter to the prohibition of stealing. When the Torah says don't steal, it is without measure. It's not like prohibited eating, where we have a Mosaic tradition that anytime you eat less than a kazayas, it's as if you didn't eat. The Gemara says this. It says that all of the measurements that we have for halacha are all halacha l'moshe misina. Ela kol halokech davar she'enu shelo b'chazaka over alav shel lo tigzol v'lo mishaneh ma shavyo. And therefore, according to this school of thought, whenever you take something without permission, no matter how small it is, you have violated the biblical prohibition of lo tigzol. The Torah simply exempts you from making restitution when you steal less than a shava pruta. And if you look at the Makor Baruch, he says, "Kain bir hamaharam shik b'sifra al Tariq mitzvos." The Maharam Shik is an achron, a 19th century achron. Delafi tam harav hamagid de gzela pachos mishava pruta asumidin chatzi shir. He says, because he says that if you understand that the prohibition is because of chatzi shir asur min Torah, that the Torah prohibits, really the asur of gezel is only a shava pruta. And the fact is that you're also not allowed to do less than what the Torah's measurements are. Like eating, he says, if you learn that way, that's the first way he presented it. Kasha deha kol hatam shel isr chatzi shiru mishum dechazi litzterufe. Bekan shahanigzol moichel al pachos mishaver puta lo shaya chazi litzterufe. He says, because the whole concept of why chatzi shir normally is usher. The reason why I'm not allowed to eat half a kazayas of chazer is because in theory I could eat a moment later another half kazayas of chazer and eventually make up the measurement that would make me truly liable. But when it comes to gezel, if the idea is that you're not really stealing if it's less than a pruta because no one really minds if you steal less than a pruta from them, so then that's not really something that can be conjoined to something else. The alkane piresh, well, I don't know, maybe you could make that argument, I'm not sure. But that's the reason why he rejects this idea that it has to do with chatzi shir. The alkane piresh delo hagazul mashma afil, delo tigzol mashma afilu kol shehu. He says, and therefore the Maramshik says that when the Torah says you shall not steal, it seems to imply that it doesn't make a difference how much. The only reason you don't have to make restitution when less than a pruta is stolen is because the Torah says that when you are stolen, when you're the stolen party, when you're the aggrieved party, and someone steals less than a pruta from you, you should be moichel. Which is interesting because in the laws of the 7 Noachide laws, one of the 7 Noachide laws is the prohibition of stealing. Mm-hmm. And with a Gentile, the Gemara makes an observation that Gentiles are not moichel, even if you steal less than a pruta. It's one of those rare situations where stealing from a non-Jew is more severe than stealing from a Jew. Wow. Because if you steal from a non-Jew, even less than a pruta, they're not moichel. So anyway, ulam b'she'ela hazu shehu nichnas lachanut v'lakach kama v'kama pa'amim pachos misha v'pruta uvihitztarev kol ha'pa'amim yesh kan sikum shel chiyuv ha'imitztarev. So Rav Sharaga gets to the meat of the question once again. The question is, can you say that multiple iterations of stealing less than a pruta can be conjoined to a significant amount? B'pnei Yehoshua tzidei lomar dahagoizel pachos mishav pruta v'chazer v'gozel od pachos mishav pruta lo amrinan dehi mitzdarfim l'shir kevin dahanigzel mochal kol chatzi pruta. The Pnei Yehoshua says that no, they're not conjoinable because each time the aggrieved party is moichel. All right, you took a few peanuts, fine.
It's peanuts.
It's peanuts. The next time the guy comes, take another few peanuts, fine. Okay, so each time he's moichel. The hishir hadavar b'tzarchin, but the Pnei Yehoshua is not convinced, and he therefore leaves off by saying that this needs further analysis. V'haminchas chinuch kosav l'chalik bein geneva l'gzeila. Interestingly, the minchas chinuch makes a division, makes a conceptual division between stealing through stealth, which is geneva, and gezela, which is when you do it in the presence of the owner. Shahageneva shenases lelo yediyas haba'olim v'habolim lo machlu leganav kevin shelo ro v'lo shoma mehageneva memela inkan mechila. He says when you steal by stealth and the owner is not aware that you've stolen from him, so basically every time the owner is dealing with a customer, you grab a couple of peanuts when he's not looking. So then you can't say that he knew to be moichel. And therefore, ve'alken kol pruta mitztarepet lecheshbon gadol v'chayv lahachzer zagneva. And therefore, since he wasn't able to be moichel because he didn't know about it, if later it turns out that cumulatively you've stolen, let's say, a 10-pound bag of peanuts from him, okay, so then that is conjoinable, and you'd have to make restitution because he was never moichel, okay? But if the owner sees each time you're gnashing on his stuff, so then each time he's moichel because he's aware of it. He has the wherewithal to be forgiving.
Rather, might you not say that if he sees you do it and doesn't say anything, he's actually giving you permission?
Well, if he sees you doing it, he's not giving you permission, but at least
he's not telling you stop doing that. So implicitly, he's
Well,
kind of
well, we
saying
don't
it's
know.
okay.
We don't
Look at
know.
it the other way too. You can say, yes, he's so, it's so silly, but he gets aggravated. He's been doing it for 20 years.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
he's just
okay,
like,
fair
no, the
enough.
guy's a schmo, like, like, who says it doesn't
So he
bother
writes
him?
it off, but he's not happy.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough.
Rabbi, this is one thing where you don't get punished in this world, you get punished in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of things are like that where they're not actionable. Okay. So that's one way of looking at it. One way of looking at it is to say that each time the gezel takes place, the owner is moichel, and therefore you don't have to make restitution, even if there's multiple iterations of less than a shava pruta. Amnam Hagon Reb Shlomo Kluger Kosav B'Shut Shnot Chayim De'in Chiluk Bein Ganav Legazlan. He disagrees. He says that there is no difference between Geneva and Gezela. Geneva by stealth and Gezela in the guy's presence. Why? He says, even when the guy steals in the presence of the owner, the guy didn't expressly say, I'm moichel. There's an assumption that if a guy is stolen from less than a shava pruta, he's going to be moichel. V'imken yesh lomer lahefech, yesh das gadol she'im haya yodea sheyigzol mimenu achar kach od chatzi pruta, lo haya moichelo. And therefore, you could say that a storekeeper who knows that this guy is going to be a repeat offender, every time he walks past my stand, he's going to take another few peanuts, then I'm not moichel even the small amount that he takes. And therefore, Rav Kluger says that it does have a cumulative effect because the guy is not going to be moichel. Va'ayin od b'machane Ephraim shekosav the kevin shekol pachos mishaver pruta Yisrael moichelim. He says the Machane Ephraim also writes. He says when someone steals less than a pruta from a Jew, the Jew is moichel. Lefi zeh im lo noda leba'olim shelakchu mimenu hu lo yoda kedei sheyimchol. Then when the theft takes place by stealth and the owner is unaware, then he's not moichel because he doesn't know. Even though had he known, he would have been moichel, but since he doesn't know about it, that's not called mechila. It's just like when a person loses an item. We paskin yeyush shalom midas lo havi yeyush. If a person loses an item and I find it, but I cannot ascertain that the owner is aware that he's lost the item. Maybe it fell off the back of his cart and I don't know whether he's aware that it's lost. I cannot take it for myself because if a person hasn't yet had yeyush, even though he would, were he to know, so then I still have an obligation of Hashava Saveda. The same thing is true. If a person hasn't yet been moichel because he doesn't know the item was stolen, that's not called a mechila. And therefore, the guy who ate the peanuts has committed an offense, and there's no mechila. Asher al kain b'mikra hazeh kevin shahamocher lo yada mashalokach me'achanut shelo kedei sheyimcholo. And therefore, in a situation where the owner is not aware that you've been plucking his peanuts, you have to go to the store, confront the owner, and tell him, I'm a new Baal Tshuva, and I want to let you know I've been eating your peanuts for years without you knowing, and I want to ask you mechila. I want to ask if you'll be moichel. And if the owner says, well, pay me, how many peanuts do you think you've eaten over the last 5 years? The problem, in a situation like this, my assessment would be the owner probably knows. There's a good chance he knows, unless it's like a super sol where they put up stuff out in the front, and
You'll never know.
you'll never know.
Each time they're saying that you're punter because the Jew is moichel, they're not saying that he's doing it every single day. It's a one-time thing. And also,
Well, we don't know how often it's taking place. We don't know based on the circumstances. Maybe the guy passes the place every day when he goes to work.
The vendor has a sign do not touch the produce that's gone.
Well, it's implicit. You don't even need a sign.
You don't even need, so if it's got
You
a
know-
sign stating, do not eat or touch or taste the produce, this.
You don't need us. That's what I'm saying. You don't need a sign. There's no need to say, don't steal my property. Like there's like if you have a house and there's no sign on the house that says, don't come into my house and steal my property. Does that mean that it's okay for me to go into your house and steal your stuff? Of course not.
So it's implicit that you can.
It's implicit. If the guy, if a person sets up a store to sell items, he's not inviting people to take things for free. He expects people to pay for the goods that they're going to be selling, that he's selling. So and therefore you take stuff, you're a goslin. I don't know what the heter is to pluck some grapes and taste them in the market. The store doesn't give you permission to do that. There is no heter for it. I don't care which market it was done in, but there's really no heter.
Sort of thing out there about that, about just tasting something before you buy it, because I've noticed, let's say like in some of these nut stores where they have signs up there saying, do not sample. So there must be in people's minds something about it.
Well, there's a difference. You go to the shuk and some store people will say, here, try it.
Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah.
Also, if you go picking apples, you can eat as many apples in the field when you're picking apples for the day as a trip, and fill up your bag. I mean, she'll, but you can eat all day long as much as you want.
Thank you for sharing, Moish.
Or you go to Golders and they give you the little spoons to taste, right? But then you walk
Yeah.
after you have 10 of them.
Right. So that's also a form of Geneva,
Right.
because they only give the customer to taste because in anticipation that the customer is going to buy the item, right? What is this place? Golders?
Golders, that famous ice cream place in Israel? They
Oh.
have in Mamila, they have in, we went somewhere.
Give you a little spoon.
Yeah, well, you can go to Zach's also. They'll do the
Zach's,
same
right? Or
thing.
B&R they used to give you, right? Baskin and Robbins. They
Yeah.
give you a taste.
But you have to ask. You can't just go behind the counter.
You have to ask,
I'll let you know.
Times-
Still deciding.
Yeah.
By the way, in secular law, they have a concept. I learned it like 40 years ago in law school, but it's a Latin term that says de minimis non curat lex, which means with trivial things, the law doesn't care. Which is if you trespass, put your pinky over the guy's property line, or you nuisance him a little bit, or steal a grape, or take a grape or something, bring it to court. The law doesn't care about trivial things like that. Probably less than a pruta would probably be the same thing.
Mhm.
The law doesn't get involved in little things like that. It's sort of
Right.
case out, like, why are you bringing this stupid case to us or something?
Yeah.
That is a concept. I've never used it, but it is the principle. Tiny little trivial things, the law doesn't get, involved in that. Maybe it's yay, I don't know.
To Europe, that's why people cut grapes. The concept is, it's so small, it's like it's not gonna do anything to anybody.
Right. But you do have to ask permission from the storekeeper.
I think psychologically, certainly if you keep repeating it over and over again, you're getting permission from yourself to keep stealing.
Yeah.
Which is not a good thing. I think that's really what it is. As far as trying to fine tune us into not at all.
Well, listen, I give points to the person who's asking the shaila. He's a conscientious Baal Tshuva, and in a world today where Choshen Mishpat is not studied widely, the fact that the guy realizes, when I wasn't from, I did a lot of things that really involved financial misdealing. I actually had a situation not too long ago where a guy came into my office who is much more frum than he used to be. And he said he had a moral lapse when he wasn't frum, and he was stealing from his employer. He was committing insurance fraud, and he feels terrible about it because he's a totally different person now. And he wanted to know, how can he get past it? So there are,
What did you tell him?
well, I said, did you make restitution? He said, I'm almost completely finished with the restitution. He lost his job as a result because the company found out. And it was a good job. And he just his question really was psychologically, how can I get past it? Right. And that's a big issue.
That's what tshuva is all about, right?
But I said, that's what tshuva is all about. I said, you're a different person now. You're not that same guy who did that stuff. And the beauty within Yiddishkeit is you are able to put your past behind you, no matter how bad your past is. In most situations, you are able to put your past behind you, and that's the power of tshuva, is that it allows a person to move forward with a healthy mindset, because he is able to sort of eradicate his past if he does proper tshuva. Okay, so it's a very timely tshuva now that we're in the season of tshuva. Let's go on to the next shaila, which is Matai ne'emar ha'isser shel lo tachmod. How do we provide the parameters of the prohibition of thou shalt not covet? Okay, it's one of the 10 commandments. Thou shalt not covet. And the Torah says, what are you not allowed to covet? Your friend's wife, his donkey, and all that belongs to him. Okay? Hitarasti lifnei shavua, v'sikamti imchami kama nidunya hu noten li. So I got engaged a week ago and made an arrangement with my future father-in-law how much he's going to provide for the dowry. Acharei ha'eris inoda li sheyesh lo kama klei kesef sheya'adotam l'nedunya shel echat mibenotav. Okay, after we got engaged, I realized my future father-in-law has a number of very expensive silver items in his house that he had already committed to one of his other daughters for her dowry. And so I put a little pressure on him and saying, can I get some of those candlesticks also? Like he's got like a whole break front full of beautiful silver stuff. And I said, hey, what am I, chopped liver? How come I'm not getting some of that silver stuff? And it seems that he finally agreed out of embarrassment, not wanting to feel like I was being short shrifted. Yeah, so he basically agreed. Did I unduly put pressure on my shver, and do I have to return the candlesticks that I pressured him into promising to me? So this is an interesting shaila. This is obviously has cultural undertones, right? Like, I think in certain cultures, this would be like, what the heck? Like, first of all, since when is a dowry a thing?
Yeah.
And the answer is that a dowry is a thing. That's why you make a Tanaim. A Tanaim document used to be done at the time of the engagement. In certain circles in Judaism, it still is done at the time of engagement, not at the time of the wedding. And what does the Tanaim basically say? It says, father of the bride promises to provide certain things for the matrimonial home. Father of the groom promises certain things. And there's negotiation involved. And all of this stuff, who's going to support whom for how many years, and where they're going to live, and so forth and so on.
It's also in the Ashkenazi community?
It is even in the Ashkenazi community, but it's especially true in Israel. In Eretz Yisrael today, it's considered to be a requirement in certain circles that you have to purchase an apartment for the young couple, and that's part of the dowry. And that's why sometimes, when you have shluchei mitzvah that come from Eretz Yisrael, They're collecting basically to buy an apartment, which is a great thing, for them. It's great. Not so great for us, because we're pressured basically into giving tzedakah to be able to purchase an apartment. I can't afford to purchase an apartment for my own kids, right? Let alone, but basically I'm part of the layaway plan for someone else's kids who are getting an apartment purchased for them.
I think it's pretty much standard in the Korean community.
Yeah.
They have to buy an apartment.
It's pretty amazing how that works. I mean, how do
No
people,
idea. Well, I think a lot of them bought their apartments 40, 50 years ago, so now they have a lot of equity. If you
Right.
have 10 kids, boy, you better have a lot of
No,
equity.
I know specifically what happens. It's like they go to boring and boring and boring. They go to this place boring, go to this
They
place.
go to Vermont, so we can-
And
It's
a lot of people in the real
Very
financial
hot.
problems.
It-
Financial problems.
So I don't know if I
It's-
call
it's
it
a-
dowry, it's just the standard. It's like in Lakewood today, the girl's parents have to pay for 2 years of learning. They have to pay.
And I'm a situation I know specifically where a couple of their older daughters never got married because they had no money to buy a apartment. It's sad. Very, very sad.
it's very sad. Okay, we'll have to hold it here for today. We'll continue this shaila about lo tachmod, Amir Hashem, next week. Have a good Shabbos, everybody. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.